Welcome to Viewpoints On, episode 27. 27, that's a
big number.
Big number. So this week we'll start out with Best of the Week. We are actually disagreeing on all sides of the spectrum this week. So why don't you can go ahead and start.
Okay, well, my Best of the Week was Chuck. I thought it was a really, really spectacular episode. There's some question about whether it's the series finale or the season finale, but I think either way that you look at it, it was a really good episode. Basically, it's the wedding of Chuck's sister Ellie and her boyfriend Awesome, so they're finally getting married, but of course Chevy Chase is playing the bad guy and he's not dead and he shows up. Chuck has finally gotten this computer out of his head and he thinks he's going to have a normal life, but, you know, all hell breaks loose at the wedding. And then it ends with Chuck deciding that he wants to get the new intersect put back in his head. So he, as his best friend, Bryce dies, he decides to get the intersect put back in his head, and he does it. So, and then at the last second, when the bad guys are going to capture him, Chuck busts out with all these super cool kung fu moves, and he was doing all this, which sparked the best line of the episode when Adam Baldwin looks at the camera and just says, "Chuck me," which I thought was hilarious. And at the end, he ends with a nice, nod to the Matrix where he's just like, "I know kung fu." And that's how the show ended. So I thought it was a great way to end it if the show is ending, because it's like, well, now Chuck is going to be part of the CIA. He's going to be a real spy with all these extra skills. But if it comes back, it'd be really interesting to see what they do with it.
Well, we should know I think May 4th is they call them the upfronts for advertisers, and they'll announce, and we'll also find about Dollhouse and things like that. So I think Chuck and Dollhouse are sort of our on-the-bubble shows that we're worried about the most.
The thing with NBC is, even if they don't want to pick up Chuck, Monk is ending. Somebody suggested this online earlier this morning. Monk is ending. They could move Chuck to USA and pair it with Psych, and it would be awesome.
Yeah.
So.
You can even pair it with Bird Notice. You know?
Yeah. So.
So my favorite of the week, I know this is going to make Stephanie mad, but last night's Lost I thought was amazing. It was very depressing. I'll give it that. I think that's probably why you didn't like it, because it was a big bummer. I felt kind of upset about an hour afterwards, because it's not a happy hugs and puppies kind of episode. It's,
to be fair, it's Lost. I don't think anybody ever expects that from Lost, though.
Well, that's true. But so it was all about Daniel Faraday. We learned all about Daniel Faraday, who his mom really was. It's Eloise, the old lady who was helping Desmond.
But then we found out who his dad is.
Yeah, and we also found out that Charles Widmore was his father. So that makes Penny his
half-sister?
Yeah, so it's, everyone's related on that show. It's just one big Brady Bunch sort of thing. But so the ending of the show was Daniel being killed by his mother in the past. She didn't know that was her son, but that she knew from that point on that she was going to kill her son.
Right.
So when her son was born and 5 and 13, she knew eventually she was going to murder him.
And in flashbacks, we saw their relationship. And
so Daniel's realization at the end that he said to his mom, he's like, "You knew all along that you were sending me here to die." I thought that was, I think he's going to turn out to be one of the most tragic characters on television, because you got to figure his whole life was leading up to him being killed, and really he didn't really do much.
Yeah.
So tell me why you didn't like it. We'll just go with that.
Right. Well, because first of all, Lost is my worst of the week. I'm not that interested in the Daniel Faraday character. He's really only been on the show for a handful of episodes. Yeah. I wasn't that curious about his backstory. And to me, it just felt like a long, drawn-out, journey through this guy's mom issues. And it just...
Well, everyone has mommy or daddy issues on that show. So
it's true, but it just... I wasn't that interested. Like you said, the last few minutes were the best part of the show. And then once you get that, it puts the rest of it in context. Just for me, for the 100th episode of this series, it just felt like, and they were saying it's going to be such a big game changer. It didn't feel that way to me, and it was a bit of a letdown that they focused on his character for the 100th episode. I mean, it does set up next week but for me it just...
Well, and next week is the Richard Alpert episode, so...
Right, that's the episode I've been waiting for. So, like, you know, how come that couldn't be the 100th episode?
Well, but the other thing you have to admit, too, is they finally answered a ginormous question that's been out there for a couple of years, is now we know 100% for sure that Charles Widmore put the plane in the bottom of the ocean. He dug up all those graves and put them in there.
Well...
He fully admitted it. He said it was me that did it.
Right, but that wasn't a question to me. I was never questioning that.
Oh, no, there was always a question of, was it him or was it Ben lying and saying that, oh, Widmore was doing it? Nothing to do with it.
But to me,
okay.
I was never questioning it.
Okay,
so
well, I did, so...
So why don't we
I'm
get
an
into
idiot.
your worst of the week?
Well, I think it's blatantly obvious what mine is. If anyone read the blog on Friday, Heroes, written by Tim Kring. Or if you're gonna go bad, you might as well go all the way bad. You know,
I
finish
have
it.
to say, when Tim told me what he thought how the show was going to end on Monday morning, I thought, well, that's a little far fetched even for Heroes. But when it was confirmed that it was the actual ending, I could not believe it.
And it was blatantly ripped off of the Marvel comic Exiles, which like 2 years ago they did almost the exact same thing.
Yeah.
And then a couple years ago with Grant Morrison's run on X-Men, they did sort of the same thing with the villain there. And Tim Kring likes to say, like, well, I don't read comic books, so, you know, it was completely original from my point of view. It was like, you have a staff of writers that write a story about superheroes. Mm-hmm. They have to read comics. And one of them had to have said, this is like exactly like Exiles. You know, they had a Marvel Comics guy on staff before they fired him.
I'm sure somebody brought it up, and he probably just smacked him down because he's the boss, you know?
So here's why I didn't like it. That, you know, the whole Sylar is now Nathan, who's really Sylar. Nathan had, like, the worst death ever. It was anticlimactic. It was out of nowhere. Not respectful of the character at all.
For a main character, been on since, like, day one of the show, you expect him to have a big death.
Yeah, and it was, like, the worst wussy death in the world, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah, flying guy. He's going to do really well against a guy who could pretty much do anything.
Yeah, completely invulnerable.
I hate that, again, they showed a Sylar fight with Peter behind closed doors. Like, what's the point in doing that? Like,
right, because you don't want to see Sylar fight anybody. No,
I don't want to see a big fight scene.
No,
Let's just show lightning coming out of the door. That's fine.
And Claire looking in.
Yeah, I don't need to see that. That's fine. No. You know, why would you do that? And they did that before, too. So.
Also, they magically forget that Claire has the healing blood, where if she had just cut herself and bled into her father's open wound, he would have magically been alive again, but nobody remembers.
That happened with Noah. He got shot in the eye and dead. He was dead. Dead. Mm-hmm. On the slab in the morgue.
Yeah.
Blood got in there. He's perfectly fine. But now all of a sudden that no one can remember that, like, you'd think if her powers of dreams were that good, she would have dreamt something like that.
The thing is about this show that ruins it are the inconsistencies. That's what ruins it, is that they just can't remember their own stories from a week prior or 2 weeks prior. So
so that's what the best of the week and the worst of the week were. You may disagree with us, but normally I'm right.